Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. Alors, bienvenue à cette première session. Welcome to this first session. I know it's very early in the morning, but we have a very interesting and very dense 2 hours together to talk about these new models for customized medicine, this new approach. It is very important for those who were here yesterday at the opening session to understand that this BIOVISION 10th anniversary session is all about personalized medicine. Now, we call these new approaches the 4 Ps. We're talking about predictive, preventive, personalized, and also participatory medicines. And we're at a turning point in medicine because we have hurdles to cross in order to take these new ways of doing medicine and implement them into the systems that we have. This is a very complex task. We'll have hurdles at the political level, hurdles at the ethical level, and also hurdles in the structures. How do we implement these new strategies? So this morning, we'll have concrete examples, solutions, people that are thinking right now and doing things in order to implement these new strategies. Also, very important, I think, and I hope we'll hear that during the day, the important links between industry and the governments in order to implement these 4 Ps. And also the emerging countries. How do we get these countries to try and quickly, with quality and very low cost, implement these new structures? So let's go to business right now because we have 11 distinguished guests from all over the world. This is the way it's going to work. We'll have a general overview with 2 of our guests. Then we'll have a cancer section with 4 or 5 guests, and then we'll move on to general diseases. And if we have time, I hope, a question period from either people tweeting right now or from our specialists down here. So without further ado, let's start with a global view. I would like to ask Dr. Alain Baudet et Agnès Buzyn to come and join me right here. So you'll stay for the whole duration right here. Thank you. Agnès Buzyn is president of the National Institute of Cancer in France since 2011. She's an MD, specialist in hematology. Her specialty is bone marrow transplant. She worked at Hôpital Necker, beautiful hospital that I visited, very big. And she will talk about the cancer control plan in France that they want to implement. But we'll start with Dr. Alain Baudet, which is president of the CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, very big organization in Canada where I come from, close to $1 billion worth of money given every year for research. Am I right? Over that. Good. That's good news for us. He has a very long and distinguished career as an MD, PhD at the Montreal Neurological Institute, the Neuro. He was head of Functional Neuroanatomy Lab and worked on neuropeptides and intracellular receptors. So we'll start with you. I will give you have that already? Great. We'll start with you, maybe to give us an overview of these 4 Ps. So we set the stage for the rest of the discussion. It's up to you. You have 7 minutes.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
So we'll get started right away. Can I have the first presentation? It's a pleasure being here today. So as you heard, I'm here to give you an overview of what
the microphone close to you, please. The microphone.
Can we have the slides on?
Yes.
There we are. Okay, perfect, great. So as I said, I'm here to give you an overview, and as you can see, this. An overview not only from the public side, but also from the funder side. How does the incredible evolution of the omics sciences, genomics, proteomics, have affected on not only healthcare, but also from a research perspective, and from a research funder's perspective, the way we fund health research. Obviously, the first consequence has been a tremendous increase in our investments in all genomics and I would say, largely omics sciences. But also not only do we increase our investment in those areas, but also the way we invest in those areas. These areas used to be highly competitive and pursued in isolation. More and more, what we're encouraging is participatory research, open access, participation into consortia, as obviously these are the avenues that are the most promising in the field. The other really striking change is that personalized medicine is too often seen as affecting mainly treatment and diagnosis, whereas actually it affects upstream prevention, and therefore the research in population and public health, the research on social determinants of health, but also downstream as it affects patient-oriented research and the participation of patients in taking their own lives into their hand, and of course research on health services and long-term care, because sometimes you can treat, other times actually because of precision medicine that you don't have an appropriate treatment, so that you have to develop appropriate long-term care. So if we just go very briefly through the 4 Ps, predictive, obviously the tools that the personalized medicine offers us now allow us to identify a number of susceptibility factors that are both genetic and epigenetic, and predictive biomarkers. Obviously, huge differences whether we're talking about risk factors or determinant genes, in which case, of course, you're talking about, on the one hand, statistics, or on the other hand, certainty. And that certainly will tremendously affect from an ethical standpoint, what you tell the patient, how you deal with the patient, and the type of genetic counseling that the patient will be amenable to. On the preventative side, well, it's quite clear that these methods enhance the accuracy and range of screening programs and allow us to very specifically make sure that patients at risk take the necessary steps to diminish these risks, or adopt a lifestyle that would allow a differential epigenetic influences on their predisposition that could delay or prevent the appearance of the disease. But it's quite clear also that this is modifying broadly our understanding of public health issues and the actions that we can take more broadly into affecting lifestyles of the population, because we are, as you know, identifying a number of epigenetic and environmental factors that will affect a large number of individuals. Personalized, I'll go very briefly on, because you'll hear a lot about the aspect of diagnostic and treatment, but obviously we're talking about stratification of diseases, stratification of treatments, and we'll hear about cancer and infectious diseases in particular, but also a huge impact on cardiovascular diseases as well. But this is really very much diagnosis and treatment and personalized and tailored treatment. It implies a reduction of side effects. It implies, through pharmacogenomics, the prevention of adverse reaction by treating specifically people that will respond or would not respond negatively to a treatment. But we have to realize that it has also major effects on the health systems, on healthcare systems, in that it gives patients a faster access to treatment. It can give patients a more rapid diagnosis, a treatment that is administered early in the game, and also a reduced invasiveness of the investigations. So finally, the participatory is really the whole change in society that personalized medicine is bringing. We're talking about e-apps that will now allow patients to monitor their own health and treatment responses, the self-management of their e-records, and of course the awareness of personal genetic profile with all the negative aspects that are linked to that. The fact that you can now on demand have your own genetic profiling may be seen as hugely advantageous, and in some cases indeed may be, but one has to ensure the quality of the profile provided and what the patient can actually do with it, and how advised the patient is to use this information, hence the importance of patient education and empowerment. So I'll conclude by just reading from a New England Journal of Medicine paper published in 2012, so a few years back already, by Mirnazami, Nicholson, and Darzi, How to Prepare for Precision Medicine, which I think summarizes everything I've been telling you today. Ultimately, precision medicine should ensure that patients get the right treatment at the right dose at the right time, with minimum ill consequences and maximum efficacy. But it will change how medicine is practiced and taught, and how healthcare is delivered and financed. Precision medicine will require handling of multi-parametric data and some proficiency in interpreting omics data, placing new demands on medical professionals who may be ill-equipped to deal with the anticipated complexity and volume of new information. Addressing these challenges will require effective clinical decision support tools and new educational models. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baudet. Thank you. Okay, a very good summary. Now we understand where we're going, what are the challenges. Dr. Buzyn, you're going to focus, I think, on cancer. The government of France has a cancer control plan, rapid access to all for free with target therapies. You have 7 minutes, Dr. Buzyn, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. So I will focus on precision medicine. I hope that one day it will be personalized medicine, but I think it's not personalized yet. So as you know, France has 3 cancer control plans. I'm sorry that the slides are not in the good shape. Okay, never mind. So France has 350,000 new patients every year. Half of them will die from cancer, and it's a main public health issue in France because it's the first leading cause of premature death. And 80,000 people could be, we could avoid 80,000 deaths per year. About 3 million people are surviving from cancer and living in France. And because of this public health issue, cancer is often chosen as a modeling disease, and especially for personalized medicine, guided by genomics. So there is a new paradigm in cancer treatment that has been anticipated through the several cancer control plans in France. As you know, molecular profiling of tumors is now necessary to guide treatments. Molecular abnormalities which are found in tumors can subdivide most frequent cancers in several rare entities. This is the case, this is the case, for example, of lung cancer, where many abnormalities have been found and are targeted by new therapies. Another paradigm is that these genetic abnormalities can be found in cancers from different organs. And so same target therapy can be used to treat several different tumors only based on the expression of the molecular target. So it's also a new paradigm that we had to take into account. So France has organized molecular genetic platforms to detect molecular abnormalities, and the objectives of these platforms was to be prepared to launch the new target therapies for the patients. And as you said, Dr. Baudet, the objective is to treat the right patient with the right drug, and I hope at the right moment. So we have 28 molecular genetic platforms, which are all over France. The idea is to have all the genetic molecular tests free of charge, wherever the patient is treated, public or private practice. And this is a program launched by the government and the National Cancer Institute. And now we have tested in 2013 75,000 patients for molecular abnormalities with 85,000 tests performed in 2013. The idea is to be very flexible and very rapid. So as soon as a new target therapy is coming into the market, we organize the test on the platforms. And as you can see, for KRAS, panitumumab or cetuximab were marketed in 2008, and we were able to perform 17,000 tests in 2009. The problem we have to face is the increasing number of molecular abnormalities. For example, lung cancer, we need now 9 different tests, but soon it will be 15, and the new drugs are coming into the market. So it's becoming more and more difficult to test gene per gene the abnormalities. So how to detect in patients all the actionable abnormalities to guide treatment restriction. And the idea is to move to a gene-by-gene approach to a sequencing approach with next-generation sequencing program on the genetic platforms. And this is the ambition of the new cancer control plan. We are now facing the arrival of all these new target therapies. 17 are in the market right now in France. Soon it will be 25, 35, 50. So we have now a gene-by-gene approach, but in 2017 we'll have only a target sequencing approach. And we hope to move to whole genome sequencing in 2019, which is the end of the plan, for more than 80,000 patients per year. As you know, the cost of sequencing has decreased those last year, and that gives the opportunity to sequence the genome of patients, but we have to face the volume of data. And this is a slide coming from IntegraGen, who has done the calculation. Genome sequencing gives 5 gigaoctet data. For 40,000 patients per year, we need 600 teraoctet data. And at a European level, it will be petaoctet data. And we don't know how to face that. The other problem we have to face, is the increasing number of compounds in the development. There is more than 6,000 molecules in the pipelines of pharmaceutical companies. A quarter of these molecules are dedicated to cancer. And in these molecules, now half of them are target therapies. So this is, for example, the pipeline that we have in the public-private partnership we have in INCA with industry to launch phase 1 and 2 clinical trials. We have already 50 molecules in the pipeline in our partnership, and soon it will be 100. And so there is an urgent need for new approaches for clinical trials, increasing number of target therapy, increasing number of rare cancers, cancer from different organs sharing the same abnormality, cancer treated successfully or in combinations with target therapies, and so clinical trials for the evaluation of target therapies in cancer must invent new designs. So we have, for example, performed the ACCES program in France, which is dedicated to favor access to target therapy to all patients with one abnormality, which is dedicated to a target drug. And for example, we have already tested 8,000 patients in France in this program and treated 150. To finish, this is the future paradigm of in-cancer treatment. I call it a solidarity network or solidarity loop. A patient will have to perform genomic analysis. Bioinformaticians will give us algorithm of treatment. We will treat patients through this algorithm, but we need the results of the treatment to be more clever and treat the next patients. So the new paradigm is this one. The treatment results of each patient will implement knowledge in the system and be useful for the treatment for all. And this paradigm is developed now in the US with the MATCH trial. But I think it's the only solution for precision medicine and moving to personalized medicine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buzyn. Thank you very much. I think it's a very good example of the complexity awaiting us with all these thousands of molecules that are being looked at in order to give precision and personalized medicine. And I think it opens up the second part of this session, which will be cancer again. And we'll start by a duo. That's very interesting because BIOVISION asked, sometimes the scientists themselves are very close to the disease that they study or impacted by them. The two ladies I will bring up now have lived that. They become, in some way, advocates for the diseases that they work on. So I would like to invite Dr. Bettina Rill and Dominique Debiet, please. We will give you microphones right here. Voila. Bettina Rill on your right, dressed in black and blue, is MD, PhD in molecular biology. She is the chair of ESMO, Cancer Patient Working Group, since 2015, and works for ICAM, a patient-led platform for the melanoma patient community in Europe. So we're talking about participation here. Dominique Debiet, dressed in gray on your left, is a pharmacist by trade, PhD. She specializes in toxicology and clinical pharmacology. She is vice president of the Europa Donna Forum France. She's an advocate for the optimal well-being of breast cancer victims, Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Is that correct? Yeah, okay, great, congratulations. We had just a few minutes to try and organize something here of a debate. I will let you start first, since breast cancer has been very much studied. We know we have genes for prediction for that disease. So I will, we have 10 minutes. I will lead you first, please.
Okay, thank you, Michel, and thank you to everybody. I'm very honored to be invited in BIOVISION. In a previous life, I was there, I think, 10 years ago, and it's always impressive. Yes, my organization is a non-profit organization, Europa Donna, has now more than 20 years. We were set up by a wonderful surgery who decided that breast cancer must be treated in another way. And he decided to found at the European level organization in each country. So now we are the big Europe because we are in 47 countries. And we raise the voice of the patient concerning breast cancer at all levels, so at the level of prevention, at level of treatment, and also the most important level, it's after the cancer, so the care of the patient and the psychological, social care of the patient. I think that what I have lot of things to say, but when I heard Agnès Buzyn, I say that I'm quite proud to be in France. We have the big chance to have a cancer plan. But I want to remind all the audience that it is not the case in all the countries. And at Europa Donna, we are fighting to have a certain level of treatment of patients that unfortunately it's not the case. Concerning all this new approach, I think that for the breast cancer, which it's a major cancer in France and I think in all the countries, what is the most important is that, okay, predictive cancer and prevention and the personalized approach is something that we know for now for a long time, but it's getting more and more complicated. So what an important point, it's for example for clinical trials. I was involved 20 years ago in clinical trials, and it was quite simple. You had a breast cancer or you had no breast cancer, you know. Now you need to have, I think, a scientific degree to understand what is the level of your cancer, what is your gene approach, what will you have, and which can be something which is also difficult for the doctor and for the patient, that to have the good knowledge to understand and to say, okay, I will have, for example, 80% chance or male chance to have a cancer because I have a specific gene. What's that meaning? When you have the cancer, it's 100%, very basic. And you know, it's for the patients, I think that the question who is only the same is that, okay, all these things are wonderful. I'm sure that I will get better treated. But at the end, are you going to cure me? You know, very, very basic question. And as our patient association level, it's something that we meet more and more. It's that patient who knows that the treatment will be good, but they don't understand always what they are going to have and to get. And also, you know, that we are speaking a lot in France about participative decision concerning all the facts that now you can be treated by a certain approach or by another approach. But patients are different. Patients want to know, want to participate, which is wonderful. But you have also patients who don't want to know. And we have to be also very nice with them, because it's not an obligation, you know, to know, and to know that they will go through a difficult setting. What I have also in mind when I speak with patients is that the importance of being well treated, I think they are quite all informed by that. But what is the most difficult is after. It's when you say the sociological, the psychosociological approach, and it's really a different level of sometimes the level of science given by all this precise and personalized medicine. You have not to forget that what is important, it's the follow-up. It's that also, you know, patient can have another cancer and they must be also taken care. So it's a different approach for that. At the Europa Donna level, we are fighting a lot to have this patient care as the best quality of this patient care. So that's my talk.
Now, for breast cancer, I think in the last 10, 15 years, as you've said, we know a lot, and it's getting more and more complex to get the patients aware. But in the case of melanoma, which is on the rise right now, which is a very aggressive and nasty cancer, what is your perspective now as you are a new startup compared to it doesn't work, you think? Well, just exchange. Okay, perfect. Do you have a different approach? How do you see the future of personalized medicine with your cancer?
So as you just mentioned, we are at the very other end of what we had just heard about breast cancer, because until very recently, something like 5-6 years ago, there was nothing that really worked in melanoma. And then all of a sudden, we are actually an example for personalized medicine that makes all the difference with the appreciation of the role of the BRAF mutation. And that was something that was just unheard of, and many of you might have seen these pictures of a tumor-riddled patient who on targeted therapy gets rid of his tumors in a very short amount of time, and this is often a picture that is shown as an example of the power of personalized medicine. What I would like to add, and we had a fantastic introduction, what France is doing on terms of personalized medicine, in my opinion, this is just the beginning. It sounds great and big and ambitious, but this is just the beginning, because cancer is not such an easy target. BRAF mutations in melanoma have been a game changer, and it is an example that you have the mutation, you respond to therapy, and it works it is as anything as close to miracle as anything I've ever seen, because it was my husband who had melanoma, and that is what brought me into advocacy. A single of these pills, and you see the tumors shrink. And this, just to see that with your own eyes, makes you believe. Seeing is believing. Having said that, at the same time, it's not just easy that you take some tumors, you do some smart sequencing, you get a result, and then you start treating. Because if you have a colon cancer and you have a BRAF mutation, the very same mutation, the drugs that work so fantastically well in melanoma will not work for you. So it is not just simple a result, a plus or a minus, that will tell you whether you get something out of that mutation. So I would caution against selling, well, we just sequence and then we have the results, because these mutations are not all the cause of the problem. You have something like bystander, passenger mutations that are just accumulated. And this is before even looking at the real tumor. Melanoma is the worst of all in terms of heterogeneity. So this tumor is highly diverse. And even within the same patient. So if you take the tumor here and sequence it, you will not get the same result than if you took the tumor there and sequence it. But it is the same patient you have to treat. And you cannot just add drugs on top of each other. 10 drugs at the same time might target all your mutations, but they will kill the patient. So it is not as simple. And most what we're doing at the moment is exome sequencing. So we're just looking at mistakes in coding regions. That's just part of the problem. Most of our genome is not coding region. You can have lots of other ways how to get a cell to do things that you don't want to do. So I think we should think ahead, one step further. We have to think larger what cancer is about and then adapt our methods that we are prepared for the future. Because otherwise we end up with data we cannot act upon. And this is, in the end, we should never, ever forget. Medicines and any healthcare intervention are there to benefit patients. They're not there to fill databases. They're not there to produce publications. They're not there to keep people in a job. They're there to keep people alive. And we should always, in my opinion, whatever we do, this should be our focus, and we should never lose sight of that. To the next topic, I would say, and this has already been touched upon, that we think of personalized medicine as highly individual. It's me, I sequence my tumor, or however we want to do it, and then I get treatment. I think this is just one side of the coin, because this is only possible if we actually all together share our knowledge. It is only possible to say whether I'm a patient at risk or my tumor is a slow-growing one or a fast-growing one, if I can compare my data with the data of all of you. And I think this is what people are not aware. So if we say personalized medicine, we also should take a stance on, let's say, data regulation, data protection. I think we have to be aware that we cannot have one without the other. So the current ongoing discussion, for example, with respect to consent in clinical trials, we have to be aware what it does to personalized medicine, and we should take a clear stance. And to come to the, well, I'm a patient advocate, the point very close to my heart is patient participation as one of the 4 Ps that we had mentioned. And as I earlier said, the focus of whole healthcare is the patient. So I think participation should be the first P and not the last. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So two passionate cries here for maybe a P number 5 and a P number 6. P number 5 and 6 might be 1 and 2, I guess, patient and maybe the psychological aspect of treating cancer patients. Now, I have a question for Dr. Baudet. Let's talk about scientific research in order to go as fast as the needs are for personalized medicine. Do you think that the scientific community is very well linked with the needs of the people treating?
I think
does it work? Or you can try another one. This
will be working.
Perfect.
I think many of the important points that as funders we're facing have been raised, and I think you've raised a number of them. The importance of open access, open data, and participation is absolutely key, and there's already a good evidence for the importance of that. But as you mentioned also, the importance of doing trials in another way. given the cost of trials, the pressure right now on funders for the number of trials that need to be supported using the current paradigm, it is no longer workable. So either we find ways of achieving trials on a smaller number of people, or using paradigms that are less expensive, that will certainly, I think, halt our capacity to deliver. And the last point, and no one really talked about it, but from a universal healthcare perspective, is how long will our healthcare systems be able to afford this? And that's a very serious question. So now, from a research perspective, what we're funding is health economy, and how do you build the economy in all of this?
Perfect, thank you very much. It gives us another perspective. I think we'll have a chance to talk about it. Thank you very much, ladies. You can now maybe sit down, and I'll take this. Thank you. Okay. Let's stay in the field of cancer. Now I would like Mrs. Hélène Espérou to join us. Hélène Espérou is Director of the Medical, Scientific and Quality Project of Unicancer Group. Unicancer Group comprises 20 French cancer centers. It is private and non-profitable. She's an MD, trained in hematology. She worked for a long time at l'Hôpital Saint-Louis. She headed important mandates for the French government, Ministry of Health and Health Policies. And Mrs. Espérou, I think now you're going to talk to us about the Observatory of Patient Expectations. Holistic, the word holistic I like. Holistic medical care from diagnosis to remission. It's all yours. You have 7 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michel. I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present the action of the French cancer toward patients during their treatment and beyond that in the field of the sanitary democracy. First of all, I would like to insist that the concept of personalized medicine is not only a biological issue, which can be summarized as a good drug for the good patient with a well-characterized tumor. The other very important side of personalized medicine consists in accompanying patients with their own individuality during all the period of treatment, from the diagnosis until the remission phase. And so this aspect of personalized medicine represents one of the two main expectations of patients that we could assess with our patient expectation observatory. Next slide, please.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
So, yes. Unicancer, that which regroups 20 French cancer centers, was created in 2011, Observatory of Patient Expectation, to answer to some major issues. It was an innovative initiative from our group to take into account the expectation of patient in a prospective way. And the aim was the adaptation of the care provision to these expectations of patient. And of course, it's some of apport to sanitary democracy to take into account the patient and his involvement in the evolution of his own medical care. With the first in this observatory, what we do, we have set in place an online consultation, which in 2012, and about 200 patients and large public has the possibility to exchange on their perception of the care it's difficult for me to speak English, as you know, but excuse me.
You're doing a great job. Just Let yourself
I'm
go
very,
there.
very sorry. So what I would like to say is that is the first expectation of patient is to be cured, and we have to keep this in our minds, this first expectation of patient, which is to be cured with the most effective treatment with the less side effect. But we have to bear in mind that the patient wants also to be considered not only as a cancer patient, but also as a person with a psychological, social, professional, emotional individuality. And we know that this response to these expectations depends on many issues, the attitude of health professionals, but also organization of health by health facilities. And our ambition in Uni Cancer Center is to provide the best organization in which the professionals can answer at best to the patient expectation. For instance, in one center in Lille, in the Oscar Lambret Center, an important work was conducted to ease the feeling of abandonment experienced by patients after their hospital discharge. By anticipating the social, personal, physical needs of patients, the return at home is planned in better condition. Then this process reduces patient anxiety and also the risk of hospitalization. This process is now developing in other centers to improve their own organization. Indeed, we have learned from patients that the condition for a real improvement to be an equal access, whether it be financial or geographical. So, with our 2 online participatory consultations, we could use the patient experience to improve our organization of health facilities. Furthermore, the patients appear satisfied to contribute to the professionals' thinking, even without waiting for an immediate personal benefit. It is a concrete action of sanitary democracy with a real sharing of expertise to improve health organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a first question in line with what we've been talking about. Can you tell us at Unicancer if you patients participate very intensely in trials for new genes that are in the pipeline? We're talking about personalized medicine.
It's a problem.
It's a problem?
Yes,
okay, let's talk about the problem.
Because we have to, I think, to accompany patients to know better what is exactly personalized medicine and what is the implication of that to know that one patient has such abnormality, and we have to explain that the gene abnormality. It's not the same if it's a biomarker on the tumor or constitutional genetic default, and so it's not easy to understand for everyone. And so I think that we, as health professionals, we have the responsibility to explain very well, and so we have set up some formation for patients. We have a school of cancerology, and we have some session to give this formation to patients.
Okay, because this is interesting because that came up yesterday also, this question about us here specialists talking about a new wave of medicine and the general population is totally unaware. Even me as a health journalist, I talk about it, but I seem to get a blank wall in front of some people who say, what are you talking about? And when you're sick and you have cancer, I think that there is a problem. And how can we solve that? Do we have to put some money aside in order to get the public aware of this?
I think that we're talking about a cultural shift here.
Yeah.
And it's not only the public, it's also the clinicians and the researchers. We're moving from a research for researchers type model to research for patients and with patients. And it's not in the culture, it's not the culture of the doctor, and it's not the culture of the researcher to actually spend the time needed that you're mentioning. With the patient and listening to the patient, actually, and taking the patient's point of view, put it at the heart of the research perspective, and that's very much starting to happen with what's called patient-oriented research, but it's really only the beginning. We've got to change the culture.
Dr. Buzet?
Just to add that
Yes.
we are funding a lot of research in INCA on social science, psychology, sociology, on personalized medicine, and all the inputs that we'll need to make the the population to understand the issues and to participate, because it's the only way to progress. As you said, everyone will have to participate for the treatment of each patient. And that's a real new paradigm.
Yes, because you can have the technology, but if people don't participate, this P, this one of the 4 Ps, won't work. And I think that is a very important one. I'm doing a story right now on this 4th P research group on transplant and the impact of sport on transplantation. And they can change the results because they participate very actively, and they give details, very fine details of how they're evolving. But then for the general population in cancer, for example, if you got a tumor and you're not aware of what's going on, you probably will not participate with such a degree of details, and the researcher is going to lose, and at the end the pharmaceutical is going to lose, and the product might not be as good. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madame Espérou. Thank you. Now let's move on again with cancer, since it's still the #1 killer on the planet. I would like to invite Mr. Massimo Tomasino. He is the section and group head at Infections in Cancer Biology Group of the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the World Health Organization. Thank you very much. We've always seen cancer as one of the 4 non-communicable diseases, and you're a specialist of oncogenic viruses, which has been an ongoing research topic. Can you give us a perspective on how we can use that in order to do personalized medicine? You got 7 minutes.
I think this is a beautiful example how we could apply all the P's. So I will try to. So 7 minutes to summarize the infections and cancer topic is it's an impossible mission, but I decide to give you a message. So when I talk to the public about the possibility that infections can lead to cancer, basically I can see the panic in the eyes of the persons. But actually, associating an infection to cancer, with cancer, it's a beautiful news, because we know where to hit. We know how we can prevent the development of cancer. And we have 2 beautiful examples of prophylactic vaccines that work very nicely. And one which is largely used in the population in the world is a human papillomavirus vaccine. It's a safe, very efficient in preventing premalignant lesions in the genital tract of the women. And we have so far sold 100, I say we, but the company is not me. I'm not associated with industry. I work for WHO. 150 million of doses in the world, so it's a very safe vaccine. And we have now facing a beautiful example of therapy against viruses, which is hepatitis C. We have drugs efficiently blocking the replication of this virus. So where we are at the moment, So this is the situation we are at the moment. So we have about 15–16% of human cancer worldwide associated with infections. But when we subdivide the world in low-resource countries and industrialized countries, the situation changed quite dramatically. You can see that basically in low-resource country we have almost 30% of cancer associated with infections. So I just say in this pie, I just gave the percentage of the different infection agents. We have mainly viruses, so we have Epstein-Barr virus, hepatitis and B and C virus, and human papilloma virus, and also we have a bacteria associated with Helicobacter pylori. So clearly, what is the epidemiology tells us? This is a courtesy from my colleague Silvia Franceschi at the IARC, and also the colleague of the Cancer Registry Department, Cancer Information Department. Basically, we see that the incidence of this cancer can vary in different geographical area, and I will come back to this point in the last two slides. Why? Because obviously environmental play also an important role, and also habits of the populations. Clearly, infections also and cancer is affected by the status of our immune system. So HIV positivity in individuals dramatically increase the risk of virus-associated cancers. And in this slide, just I summarize some of the impact of HIV infections on cancer. So why these viruses, how do they work? How do they induce cancer? So we could subdivide the family of the oncogenic viruses into subgroups. In one group, the virus, the oncogenic virus, they play a direct role in carcinogenesis. And why they play a direct role? Because they produce proteins that we call oncoproteins, able to facilitate the transformation of normal cells in malignant cells. And here we have a human papillomavirus, human herpes virus 8, also called Kaposi sarcoma herpes virus, Epstein-Barr virus, and human leukemia virus. And then we have the viruses that can create an inflammation. They can, in a chronic infection, they damage the tissue. This leads to constant regeneration of the lesion, and this is facilitate the transformation. And this is hepatitis B and C, and also the bacteria Helicobacter pylori. I put a question mark there because actually there are emerging indications that also this, for instance, hepatitis B and C could be moved to the group on the direct role. Now, what is really happening when a virus that produces oncoproteins infect the cells? Well, the good news is that these viruses are largely present in the population. So this is an important message for everybody. Getting infections doesn't necessarily mean that we develop cancer. But in the majority of the cases, this infection is cleared by our immune system. So when a virus enters the cells, oncoproteins are produced, and these oncoproteins, the only worry for these oncoproteins is to make more virus, to make the progeny. What do? They regulate the proliferation of these cells. So the virus is a parasite, keep the cells in a proliferative status. And also, evade the immune system. So it's a battle between the host and the virus. Clearance is occurring in most of the cases. In a minority of cases, there is a persistence of the infections, and this is the event leading to the disease. No persistence, no cancer. And so when you have a persistence of infections, you have a DNA damage, chromosomal instabilities, mutations of the DNA. And this is an irreversible process when there is a damage to the DNA, you have cancer development. So I just want to finish with an important message, and I also refer in the beginning of my talk. there are many viruses. They are largely distributed in the worldwide population, but the incidence of the associated viruses is strictly dependent on the geographical area. So clearly, this is suggesting us that there is a strong cooperation between environmental factors and infections. And I want to mention two classical examples of Epstein-Barr virus associated with the Burkitt lymphoma in the sub-Saharan area in Africa, where, you know, this is a child lymphoma. This is typical of this area in Africa. And nasopharyngeal cancer in Asia, we're getting associated with EBV, but this is strictly associated with this geographical area. So clearly, there are science is focusing also to understand the synergism between infections and environmental factors. So this is very critical for future research. Okay, so I want to finish with the model or hypothesis. So we have the model number one is very well established. The virus infects the cells, persist, induce DNA damage, and lead to cancer. And the virus is important from the beginning to the end, because if we block the viruses in cancer cells, actually we can have a regression of death. We can induce death of the cancer cells. Then we have some examples. The science tells us there are some environmental factors that synergize with the viruses in the model number one, facilitating the life cycle of the virus and lead with more efficiency to establishment of a chronic infection. So it's like oil in the wheel. So these environmental factors facilitate the persistence of infections. And number three is the most difficult model now, is where basically the virus is not the driving force of the carcinogenesis, but is the environmental factor. And I would just like to mention a possible model where a lot of scientists are working on it. It's non-melanoma skin cancer and UV irradiation, where you have also an important component in this cancer, the immunosuppressed status, strongly suggesting the involvement of infectious agents. And indeed, there are many evidence, there are lines of evidence that papillomavirus cutaneous may facilitate the development of non-melanoma skin cancer. So the science will need to focus on these models, number three, where they are much more difficult, because probably in this case, the virus is not necessarily at the last step of carcinogenesis, so will disappear after. Am I doing okay?
Give you 1 minute more.
No, I think I finished.
Yes?
Okay,
You're sure?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'm saying
Conclude.
we are still far from the end, despite we got scientists got the Nobel Prize in 2008 for the Association of Papillomavirus Cervical Cancer. We still need to work a lot to find a new way of association of infections. And this is going to be always a very good news, because we know how to fight.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Questions here from our two men? Questions here? No? I have a question. As a journalist now, I'm going to ask you that question. In general, cancers, the major ones, may there be lung, colon, breast, these major cancers are not really associated with viruses. Now, the presentation you have given us are for maybe 3 or 4 marginal cancers, I'd say. If we work on trying to get vaccines, even the HPV vaccine in the United States and Canada, people are not really going for it right now. There seems to be, in general, a problem with vaccines in the population. How can you go about saying that we can personalize and offer vaccines for different types of cancers?
Sorry, I didn't have a time to go in details of the epidemiology of this cancer. These are not marginal cancer. In some geographical area, cervical cancer is number 1. I mean, it's in Africa.
Emerging countries, in Africa.
Yeah, in Africa, and in the industrialized countries, I think it's 7. I don't recall now the number, but obviously dropped dramatically with with the screening of the pap test. So pap test had a fantastic impact, but didn't go to zero. I mean, we have countries where introduced the pap test in 1955 in Finland, but still we have 10 cervical cancer for 100,000 women. So I think it's still a problem, and the vaccine indeed is an extraordinary tools. The important point is that, for instance, in the last 10 years, papillomavirus has been associated with oropharyngeal cancer. 25% of the oropharyngeal cancer are associated. And the bad news is that we see the oropharyngeal cancer negative for papillomavirus decreasing because there is an anti-campaign, anti-tobacco campaign, but oropharyngeal cancer positive for papillomavirus are dramatically increasing. So in Sweden, for instance, we have a triplication of the cancers in 30 years. So I would be very careful as a journalist to use this words, marginal.
Okay.
So it's
maybe Dr. Baudet can give us a perspective. Are we spending enough money generally in order to address this association of viruses and cancer and trying to have tools?
I think there's a lot of funding going to that area. I totally agree with our speaker. It's a phenomenally important area. From a public health perspective, it's the resistance to vaccination that we have, I think, to worry about.
Yeah.
Why isn't the vaccine more rapidly in use in more countries, and why isn't it mandatory? And why are we seeing in our countries a sudden resistance, even among the educated class, to vaccines, including those vaccines?
That was my question. I'm not again. I'm for vaccines.
No, sure.
I'm fully vaccinated. But the question is, there seems to be in the population a certain resistance. So we're going back to education here, I guess.
Yeah. I just want to point out that I'm a basic researcher, and I have a very naive vision of public health. I work for an institute. It's a research institute, but close to public health, to be part of WHO. And I don't have any conflict of interest because I don't have any relationship with the industry. But I think a vaccine, I strongly believe the vaccine could be really extraordinary tools to fight against this virus-associated cancer. Also, because it's one or two doses in the life, so the cost is almost zero if you compare with therapy. I mean, think about the therapy against hepatitis C costs 80,000 euros. And also impact on the screening program as well. So I think maybe it's not my territory. I don't want to invade public health, but I have this vision.
Well, thank you very much for this nice presentation. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to yes, thank you. Voilà. Now we're going to move on to our third section on diseases, communicable diseases, and others not. My first guest is Philippe Frogel. Please come up, Dr. Frogel. He is professor at University of Lille 2 and Imperial College in London. He is an MD, researcher in endocrinology. In fact, he's a world leader in research on the genomics of diabetes. He has created two very important research units, one at the CNRS Lille 2 Institut de Pasteur Lille, and the other one, the Center for Genomics and Proteomics at Smith Hospital, Imperial College. The 4 Ps, diabetes is a complex disease. How can we make it more personal and the treatment? 7 minutes. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. As you know, there are 300 million people with diabetes these days, and this number will double in the next 30 years. When I was a resident some time ago, we used to weigh the patient. And when the patient was obese, we used to give them a drug named metformin. And when the patient was non-obese, was lean, we used to give them another drug, the oldest drug, oral drug for diabetes, named sulfamide. Today, we still weigh the patient, but we give all the patients the same drug, metformin. And when it fails, as it usually does, there's no clear guideline what to do. And as a consequence, diabetes worsens. A large proportion of patients develop complications, and they still die early. So from this very low point, is it possible to develop a more personalized diabetic medicine And my response is yes, because we have some proof of concept that it may work. 10 years ago, my group and another group in the UK identified 2 genes responsible for very early onset diabetes. It was a gene encoding for potassium channel of the insulin-secreting cells. Why it's important? Because it changed everything for this patient. This patient had insulin from the first days or months of their life. It has been possible to stop insulin, to give them sulfamide, and of course it changed their life. What did we learn in the last 10 years? First, that these patients, when they received sulfamide, had normal glucose values, and they still have normal glucose values. So they are virtually cured from diabetes. It's good for them, it's good for the society, we save a lot of money. Secondly, they are more numerous compared to what we expected at that time, and many patients, even with what we call garden type 2 diabetes, coming from diabetes, have this mutation. And when we recognize these people, we give them sulfamide, we have exactly the same result, virtual cure of type 2 diabetes. So is it possible to do better? Yes. First of all, we believe that about 5% of patients with diabetes have this kind of genetic diabetes, and they can be recognized if we want to do it. Secondly, we believe also that it is possible beyond to treat better a large proportion of patients with diabetes if we are able to recognize their specific disease. So to do it, we need to meet different objectives. The first one is to be able to diagnose this patient, to understand why they are diabetic, what is the etiology. The second, we have to elucidate the physiology of their own disease, not the disease of the other guys, but this one. And third, we have to be courageous and to give them a specific treatment, not the treatment of everyone with diabetes. So for the recognition, the diagnosis, some groups, like my group, have developed some approaches, genetic approach for the diagnostic. And we developed targeted resequencing with NGS approach, very inexpensive, very quick, 3 days, and also extremely sensitive. Secondly, when we don't know exactly what is a gene, and it's a new gene, we developed very inexpensive, very sensitive whole exome sequencing approach, about 400 euros to do the work. And by the way, Madame the President of INCA, it's easy to translate that for cancer. And I have to tell you that if I had a cancer, or if my mother had a cancer, I would not understand why we have to wait for 2019 to generalize this thing. My group in Lille, my Equipex, we can do that for you if you want. And we can do that today and not in 2019. As a patient, why we have to wait for something that is available in France? Of course, maybe not in one of your 28 centers, but in some centers paid by the government through the PER. So first thing, we have to recognize it, and we can do it today, not tomorrow. The second thing, we have to understand why these people are diabetic. And we have developed some integrated approach with metabonomics associated with whole exome sequencing to try to understand when you find a mutation, because you always find mutation, what exactly is going wrong in this patient. And secondly, we developed, we are not the only group to do that, we developed stem cells, somatic stem cells, to test drugs to the cells of the patient. So the insulin-secreting cells of the patient, the hepatocyte, the muscle cells of the patient, from the blood, we develop multipotent stem cells and then we derive. And that is a kind of testing drug for every patient. Of course, it won't be possible for every patient, but for some patients it will be possible, and it's a way to try to have new treatment. And of course, as I said before, we have to test it and to try to give this patient a new drug. So is it possible to move to personalized medicine diabetes? Yes, we can, but we have to just to do it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fagel. Would you like to answer to the attack here?
Yes, I will answer. First of all, the idea is not to perform sequencing on the 28 platforms. And the question is not sequencing, of course, it's the analysis, the bioinformatics, and the algorithm. So you need a knowledge of cancer and cancer results with the treatments to implement the system. So I have 10 offers of labs who want to collaborate to perform sequencing. My question is, who is performing the best analysis and performing algorithms that can be useful to the patient? And as we need big data, we need to organize it for the world territory. I think it is not a center approach, it's a national approach if we want to be efficient.
Okay.
So, but I will look at your offer, Dr. Frogel.
Yes.
In genomics, there is no specific disease. There's the genome and the abnormalities of the genome, and especially for cancer, somatic genome. We are working on ovarian cancer, and we have colleagues from Montpellier, and they are desperate because they think they are going too slow, and they are thinking about creating companies to do the job and to move to personalized medicine. I'm totally against the bureaucratic view of that. In favor of some example that worked and can be generalized later, and not the opposite, bottom up and not the opposite. And I think my colleagues and I and others will prove that we can do well.
Okay, well, maybe at lunchtime, or you'll have a chance to pursue this discussion later on. Yes, you have a question? Yes, we'll give you a microphone.
It's not a real question, it's an information. I achieved some benchmarking about the question which was raised about the best computing system. And it's my personal benchmark. I can have missed something, but the best is, from my information, the system set up by Peter Tonelato at CBMI at Harvard by using cloud, and it's open source. The informatic treatment, giving the causal cognitive genes, and the last layer of the information, the recommendation for a drug which is activable, matching to the database which are known today, takes 1 hour and takes $35-6.
Okay, it's cheap on top of that. Okay, we take due note. We will share that. Now let's move to the next topic. The next topic, again, as a journalist, is one that is always very good to sell newspapers. It's all about pandemics, influenza. Now we are naturally waiting for the big one. The cycles go up and down, but H1N1, we thought we had something there, but we did not. How can we do personalized medicine to predict and treat such viruses? So I would like to invite Mr. Peter Openshaw, Professor of Experimental Medicine, President of the British Society of Immunologists. He is a specialist of H1N1. He dealt with that in 2009. Dr. Openshaw, you have 7 minutes to explain to us how these viruses can be dealt with in a perspective of the 4 Ps.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's a very different sort of perspective from most conferences, I think,
yes,
that most of us attend. So I'd like to just tell you a tale of 2 viruses. So this is what I've been doing for the last 5 years, and I would say that it has been the best of times and the worst of times in terms of my experience. The best of times, I think, in terms of the science, the worst of times in terms of trying to get through the regulations and filling out the paperwork. Okay, so the first virus is one of my long-term favorites I've been working on for about 30 years or more, respiratory syncytial virus. So this is a common cold virus that mainly affects infants, and we've recently been infecting adult volunteers. So the reason for doing that is that it's not ethical to infect infants because it causes quite severe disease in a high proportion, but in adults, you and me, it would cause a common cold. So this is showing a study in which we had 61 volunteers at Imperial College, and we gave them all exactly the same virus. So we put the same virus into their noses by nose drops. And 27 of those 61 had no infection at all. We couldn't detect any virus infection. The virus was completely eliminated and they had no symptoms. Of the 34 that we succeeded in infecting, roughly 1/3 had no symptoms. So 11 out of those 34 had no symptoms. So what's the reason for this intense variation? You know, those who had symptoms, there was a range of severity. So we don't really understand what accounts for that variability. It's not just down to antibody, which I think was the presumption that many started with. So we're analyzing this, this big study using every omic method we can to discover the cause of that variation. So the second virus was the pandemic influenza virus. This is the swine flu virus. It was a unique opportunity for us to study the natural history of a single virus as it spread through a population. A hugely successful virus in terms of its spread. About 75% of people who became infected, according to Andrew Hayward's study in the UK, had no symptoms at all. So only about a quarter of those who became infected had any symptoms. And of those, there was a huge range. These are two patients that we saw at St. Mary's Hospital, where I work in Paddington. One was, this is a caretaker, this is the X-ray of a caretaker rather, who came in having had a relatively short history of flu. He had a high fever, a cough, a bit of an exacerbation of his asthma, but he was treated and he went home within 2 days. On the other side, we have a taxi driver of Pakistani origin who delayed attending medical care. He wasn't really tuned into the medical health system, and he turned up in extremis, very low oxygen saturation, had to be ventilated, was in hospital for 3 weeks. So the same virus, two very, very different diseases. So in the face of this, we set up a study supported by the Wellcome Trust and by the Medical Research Council to look at everything we could which might explain this. So we looked at the virus sequence. We know there are some virus strains, high-path strains of influenza, which cause bad disease. We measured viral load. We also looked at the host genome, and we looked at as many environmental factors as we could in order to try to work out what it is when there's a collision between the virus and the host somewhere in the epithelium that causes very severe disease or causes mild disease. We measured bacterial load. We quantified bacteria by 16S. We measured all the mediators, and we looked at the peripheral blood transcriptomics. So in order to try to map what it is that leads from health to severe disease, we thought we needed to study everything, the host, the pathogen, and the co-pathogens. And we ended up with 21 million data items in our database on this rather intensively studied, relatively small number, but a much bigger number, I think, than anyone else has managed to do. One of the things we did especially was a very in-depth inquiry into each medical history, and this took us something like 20 months with 8 workers going over the history independently, trying to validate every detail. Huge study, and a very large number of samples in our biobank. So I can't tell you all the results, it would take too long, but those of you who like to see some data, this is a peripheral blood transcriptomic signature map, which shows that patients in the first 5 days have a rather different signature from those in the later course of disease. So there seems to be a signature change. The cause of that we can understand using this integration of all the data, and we can do network analysis and various other sophisticated analyses. And Charles Offray, who's here in the audience, is, I'm very glad to say, part of the PREPARE consortium, which has gone on from Mosaic, really, to try to validate and understand some of the things that are coming out of this type of study. So there's a huge amount of information to come out of all of this, and I think that from it, I'm sure we'll be able to much more accurately predict who is going to die and who will live, and who indeed will have no symptoms at all when they encounter one of these common viruses. I think the importance of that is that we should be able to target vaccines and antivirals. Just as when I see a patient with chronic obstructive lung disease in the clinic, I give them rescue medication to keep at home. I give them antibiotics and steroids. They know how to take this. in need. And in the same way, I think we should be targeting individuals at high risk with, say, influenza. And I think we need much better vaccines. So all of this, I think, is a really good example of being able to personalize, be proactive, and to contribute to participatory medicine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Openshaw. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Dr. Buzyn has a question, please.
My question is, do you think that this signature can move with time? I mean, if the patient would have been infected in another period of time with environmental factors, epigenetic factors, that the answer and the signature would have been different? Do you think it could be possible?
You mean a different age or a different...
At a different period of his life, because he's in a different state.
For sure. Well, I think it's clear that age is one determinant of how the disease evolves. It's a different disease in children, and we need to stratify for that. There's so many factors that can potentially influence the way in which the signature evolves.
In fact, my question is, you identify high-risk patients with your signature, and do you think that high-risk patient could be high risk at one period of their life and maybe not such as risk later on because of...
That's a very interesting question. We did publish a paper a couple of years ago in Nature which identified IFIT-M3 gene variants as a major cause of variation in the severity of disease. That obviously won't change through life. But I think that there are also things like the respiratory microbiome, which may change quite significantly. And from the RSV challenge studies, that's coming out as being a really interesting lead that may actually determine whether you get symptoms or not.
Dr. Baudet?
Well, first of all, congratulations. It's a super study and such a nice illustration of pathogen-host interaction. My question is, how specific to the pathogen is the host reaction? And are there elements in the host that would be similar for a variety of pathogens?
I think this is a hunch. I mean, we haven't been able to do the challenge studies in a sufficient number of individuals sequentially to really tell whether susceptibility to RSV equals also susceptibility to flu, for example. We could potentially do that, and we're starting to do some influenza challenge studies now. But I think that's a little way off. I think that in the meantime, my assumption is that the protection is rather personal and individual to different specific pathogens. And I think that's a lucky thing, because if there is a pandemic, we won't all die of it.
Can you also try and model the way that the virus itself mutates as it goes from one individual to another?
For sure. We actually just had a paper in Journal of Virology a few months ago showing that during sequential isolates of the virus, they do behave differently, both in cultured respiratory cells from humans, but also in mice. There's a decline in the ability of those viruses to induce interferon, for example, in mouse infection. So the properties of the virus did evolve a bit during the pandemic as it adapted and circulated around the world.
Okay, and a last question. In Quebec, our vaccine for influenza this year was a flop. It didn't work.
Yeah.
You see? Is there a way for your research to try and solve that problem? The fact that it does mutate, from last year to this year, or is this always a chance phenomenon?
That in itself has been a huge ongoing problem for decades, trying to predict where the virus is going to go next. Generally, I think the predictions have not been too bad. This year, it was disastrous, and many of us that were vaccinated actually had flu. But I hope that in the future that prediction may become a bit better. But what we really want are vaccines that protect against all strains of flu and which give longer-lived protection. The vaccines we have, I think, are clearly not ideal.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, please. Is it possible to get a microphone? Voilà.
So I have a question. If you have data on twins that have been exposed to different environments?
Yeah, we would love to be able to do a twin study, very powerful in terms of teasing out the genetic contribution, but this wasn't a study of twins, it was just an opportunistic study. It'd be interesting to do RSV challenge studies on twins, if anyone's willing.
Any more questions? Yes? You can, I don't know where you're far away, but she will give you a microphone. Can you give your name and your organization, please, so that we know who you are?
Yeah, sure. Cormac Sheridan, journalist with BioWorld. I would like to echo the other speakers as well. I think it's a fascinating study. Very curious to know, though, how, say, you can boil down maybe several 100,000 data points per patient into some sort of translatable, measurable biomarker that can be applied at a sort of a system level or in the hospital itself.
Yes, I mean, this is, from the outset, we knew that this was going to be a huge problem, and we wanted to interact with mathematical biologists. I put a lot of effort into trying to get the mathematical biology community to come on board at the start of the study, and it's only now that actually I've managed to find people like Charles who are not only able to do this, but excited about doing it, and we now are moving into being able to analyze our data set using all of these sophisticated techniques, both statistical and other. But that's not really my area, but we're working together on this. And I think there are already things coming out. We've come down to 3 predictive markers which tell us whether a patient will need ventilation, and a different 3 which tell us whether the patients are likely to die. These need to be validated, but I think it is an exciting time.
That's extraordinary. Has that been published?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Openshaw, for this fascinating talk. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to genetics, genome. I would like to invite Professor Francis Quétier, Professor Emeritus at the University of Évry, France. He's a specialist on genomics. He worked for Genoscope, the National DNA Sequencing Platform, worked on chromosome 14. Now, this is very central, Professor. Genomics, the genes that can tell us, predict if we are susceptible to disease. Can you give us a 7-minute perspective on that? It's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind invitation. My favorite definition of personalized medicine is as to the giving the right drug to the right patient at the right dosage through the right way of delivery at the right time. And in this respect, personalized medicine based on the sequencing of human genomes brings a new and powerful tool to comply with these guidelines. It has now been 9 years since the human genome sequence has been completed, after a decade of research achieved by the international consortium, public consortium, HGP, and have the great pleasure to participate in that saga by sequencing the chromosome 14 within the team of Jean Wessenbach at Genoscope. And the Golden Path, which has been released by HGP, cost $3 billion and has been since freely available from the web from the very beginning. And our set of the 22,000 genes constitute our genetic information, which is shared by every individual. A part of this alteration is due to slight different versions, which are different between each individuals. And this alteration can lead to diseases. During these 9 years, the continuous improvements in both the sequencing techniques and the dramatic increase in the high throughput of robots makes now the sequencing step achievable in 30 minutes, like you heard from Lee Wood yesterday, and for a sum which is a little bit less than $1,000 now. This easy sequencing of individual genomes has opened new tools in the field of medicine and can be divided in 2 main categories. The first one contains 4 points. First, personal genome greatly helps physician and his or her patient when the patient is confronted with a lethal disease, with sometimes and very often close to a fatal outcome. And this is very important because we know now success stories by the score, which have been reported not only for cancers, but for general diseases. In the same medical field, this is a second point, it's now possible to sequence a special category of cells. These are the circulating tumor cells, which occur in the blood. And you can prevent, monitor, survey the possible relapses after chemotherapy or radiotherapy. First, the third point is that personal genomes are very useful because you can predict whether an individual is or isn't likely to develop such or such a disease. And fourth, personal genome can predict for various diseases whether a patient has a good probability to respond to a category of drug, while personal transcriptomes may allow tailoring the dosage and the time of delivery. The second set of application goes in the converse direction from the bench of patients to research, and is useful for fundamental and applied research. Contains also the 4 points. First one is that personal genomes completed by personal transcriptomes gives crucial information about the nature of the gene or the genes. They can be several causing the disease. I would like to underline that out of our 22,000 genes, only half, roughly 10,000, are known today to bring a disease when they bear a mutation. It means that the other half, we don't know, but we highly suspect that they can give rise to some disease, and we don't know which disease match with that alteration for the moment. This identification can use the personal genome. It's rather easily to be done with a rare disease because they are caused each by one gene only. But on the other hand, for most of the current diseases, like obesity, like diabetes, like polyarthritis rheumatoid, and many psychiatric diseases, these diseases are caused by several genes each, and we don't know the number for the moment. So this is here that people and scientists are using large cohorts of the patient genome, try to identify the causative genes, and it's not so easy. Second point is that when a causal gene has been identified, searchers are going to explain how this gene, alone or in combination with other genes which are interacting with the first one, are responsible for the inception and the maintaining the persistence of the illness. And this is an absolute prerequirement to imagine a possible therapy. If not, you can't do anything. The third is that personal genomes are also a very good source to identify and develop companion markers, sequence markers, which can be used because they accompany the disease to detect, to monitor the progression, or better, the regression of a disease. And the last but not least, power is very important. It is the most important. This individual genome sequence can help to stratify the patients because they are heterogeneous. And this is good to have homogeneous cohort for research, as well as to achieve efficient tailoring of the dosage to be recommended for a drug for the regulatory body. Fortunately, both the workflow to apply research knowledge of today to the patient base and the workflow, which is going in the reverse direction to bring clinical information from the patient base to research, are fully identical. They contain exactly the same set of steps in the same order, and they use massively biocomputing and big computing. And moreover, this workflow is generic to all illnesses because it depends on the personal genome, which is unique to any individual. For the moment, the bioinformatic analysis of DNA takes, in the best case, 1 hour of computing, as I told you. When the time is necessary for the DNA extraction from the patient cells, the preparation of the DNA to sequence, the sequence, and the analysis to detect the causative mutation, going back to the physician who made the prescription, it takes now only 3 weeks. This is the target which is assigned to any labs in US. For the moment, the real time is in the order of 2 to 3 months. But this is a target now, 3 weeks. Conversely, the time to go in the converse direction to bring information from the patient's bed to research, translate in new knowledge, and imagine the possible therapy with the preclinical and clinical trials, it's 3 years or more. This is the difference between the two halves of the magic circle.
1 minute left. Unfortunately, time run.
Okay. To finish, the national deployment of sequence-based personalized medicine in France will be the next step. We are involved in launching a pilot platform to test that in various illnesses. And the final step will be to the deployment of sequence-based personalizers in the whole nation. It will involve millions of genome sequencing and analysis, and an expansion of such a scale will require massive investment in robots, in bio-IT specialists, and national partnership with big data, big computing companies. The last message is one sentence. For the moment, as far as I know, the efficiency of the first drug, which is prescribed by a physician to a severe affected patient, the efficiency is less than 50%. We have to do with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Professor Casey. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? No? So better, cheaper, faster, I think that's what we have to aim for, right?
Right.
Thank you very much, Professor Casey. Thank you. You can give the microphone to the lady. Thank you. Now, moving from genomics and trying to effectively get better products going on, we're going to go to the products that are right now used. Now, I would like to invite Valérie Raymond-Schwartzman. She is the Companion Diagnostic Program Director at BioVision. She is a pharmacist, studied at University Claude Bernard Lyon here, so she's back at home. So what can companion diagnostics help us in this 4P paradigm that we're facing? 7 minutes.
Thank you, Michel. So yes, so I'm glad to be with you to present companion diagnostic as a tool to support personalized medicine. And what I will present is really the side of the IVD company, in vitro diagnostic company, and how we are developing companion tests, what are the challenges, what are the benefits, and so on. If we go back to the definition, and a lot of you define what is personalized medicine, if you go quickly to Google and on Wikipedia, you can see that there is a strong link between personalized medicine and companion diagnostic biomarkers. So really, biomarkers and companion diagnostic are there to support what is the customization of healthcare and the way to stratify patients. So another definition is really coming from FDA, because this is a more advanced notified body to define and give guidelines regarding what is personalized medicine and what is companion diagnostic. So if you have a look to the definition, you can see that companion diagnostic are tests that provides information that is essentials for the safe and effective use of corresponding drug or biological product. So this is really the strong link between the drug and the diagnostic. So therefore, they put here a puzzle. But what I like, it's really more the idea of a marriage or a couple between the drug and the device. So just to give you an idea, and what are your guesses regarding the number of companion diagnostic tests that are registered at the FDA side? Do you have any idea? Because here we talk a lot of personalized medicine, diagnostic tool. We have the feeling that there is so many tools to stratify the patient, especially in oncology. But when it comes to registered tests, so that means FDA approved or CE approved, but at the FDA, this is the highest level of requirements, and this is also the highest level of regulations around that. So do you have a guess? And yes, or somebody in the room? No, so very few, yes. This is this. So there is today 20 20 tests FDA approved, mainly in oncology. So this is what we call BRAF. This is KRAS. This is HR2. There is also some others, but there is also 20. So why? Because from IVD perspective, so we are bringing on the market tests that are easy to use, that could be available everywhere. This is a big difference between homebrew or lab-developed tests. So that means it should be able to test patients everywhere with something that is robust, that is good quality. So this is why the number is so low. And then when I was speaking about this is a couple, the drug plus the test, it's because like a couple, there is good things, there is benefits, and there is things that we need to improve also. So if we go to the benefits of the companion test, this is a huge medical value that this kind of test bring to different stakeholders. So first you have the patients. So here, as we discussed before, this is a way to stratify the patient, to give the right treatment to the right group of patients. I prefer to say group of patients because today we cannot say to one patient, one drug. This is not possible and it will not be the case. Even if personalized medicine, companion diagnostics are really pushed by the new development trend in drugs, because you can see that in 19th there were only 5% of biomarker-targeted drugs, and now this is for 45%, so really an increase, so therefore we need these biomarkers. So we will stratify a group of patients, and it will also help the patients. You discuss management of the patient, psychological approach, and this is also part of this, because the patient will better understand his pathology, he will better understand his treatment, and then the observance will be better. So this is really a big benefit for the patient. Then also for the physician to prescribe a new biomarker, to prescribe a targeted therapy. This is also an easier decision-making process. This is easy to explain to the patients. Also for healthcare company to have these companion devices, this is a way to decrease the project risk, because the duration of the clinical trials will be lower, the cost also, and we will put on the market drug really early. So this is a way to de-risk a project, and some drugs has been rescued by companion diagnostic, because at the beginning the clinical trials are really bad and really negative. So Bettina, I see that you are saying yes. So and so it was really a way to rescue this drug, because otherwise they would have not been approved. And by understanding better the physiopathology, then we discover some biomarkers that can support the prescription of the drug. And then it ended with a companion diagnostic and a drug, and then we can treat melanoma patients, we can breast cancer. So this, there is also benefits for the IVD companies, because then we are putting now the testing, the in vitro testing at the center also of the patient treatment. So it brings value to this test. And also for FDA, for ANSM, for all this notified body, then it's more easy for them to give approval, because this is based on more robust data. So for them, we can have a more rapid approval. Also for payers, this is a good way to control the spending, the healthcare spending, because they are more sure that now the right treatment will be given to the right patient with the best efficiency. So this is really an efficient way to manage the cost. So there is a benefit for them. Now, if we go back to my slide, or
you have 1 minute left, unfortunately.
Okay. So then there is here some key issues to manage, or some critical factors. So that means the market access and the reimbursement, because worldwide there is not so many platforms like INCA, like in France, and in some countries this is not free of charge. The patients need to pay, so this is out-of-pocket money. So therefore the reimbursement is very important, and this is important of the reimbursement of the drug and of the companion diagnostic at the same time. Also the testing availabilities in order to test all the patients. So therefore, we are developing tests that are commercially available that you can find in every lab, not only in a reference lab like the LDTs, the lab developed tests, or the home-brew tests that are only available in some reference lab because they are not approved. And so this is really the testing availability that is also key. And what we need also, this is this perfect alignment between the launch of the drug and the companion. Also the business model, we have to capture also the created value and to share this between the drug company and the diagnostic company. This is also something that is important. And to come back to the regulatory environment, then also this is a challenge because this is a really high level of requirement. And then I'm done because I see Michel that
yes.
cut. So no, I will not cut, but this is what I would like to highlight regarding
a conclusion then.
Device part.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Schwartzman. Thank you very much. Time is of the essence. We only have one speaker left, so I think we'll skip the question period if you want to give enough time to the last speaker. You're very
sure.
nice. Thank you very much.
I'm around, so if
voilà.
you have some question, I'm here.
Okay. Now, time is flying. Thank you very much, BioVision, to give us more time. I think we really needed it. We have so many interesting guests. Now, the last person to talk is Florence Gaudry-Perkins. She is the International Director for Global Government Sector at, we don't know if it's Nokia yet, but it's still it is still Alcatel-Lucent. It's in the news this week. We're going to talk about something very interesting, and I was very impressed when I saw her slides. It's all about mobile health. It is booming, it is very big, and it seems to be very efficient. I think you're going to give us some good examples. You have 7 minutes. Good
We're
luck.
going to have to try to go fast. So,
okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. Lyon is my hometown, so it's always a pleasure to be back. And BioVision is also very dear to my heart. In fact, I want to take 1 second to thank BioVision because we won a little prize here 2 years ago via the Catalyzer program, which has turned into a very, very impressive project, I'm happy to report, which I'll talk about in the presentation. I want to do, I always do this when I speak. I'd like to do a quick scan. Can the people who feel they're fairly familiar with mobile health raise their hands? There's a lot of awareness to be raised on mobile health still, and I always kind of like to test it out. So I see no more than probably 10 hands raised in the audience, which is fairly typical, which amazes me because everything that we've talked about since yesterday, mobile health can be a huge tool to accelerate all of those things that you've been talking about. So mobile health is basically the intersection of health and mobile technology. It uses smartphones, tablets, connected sensors, and monitors, as well as fitness trackers and things like that. So this slide here, we won't have time to go through all of these numbers, so I'll just zoom in on 2 or 3, but it sets the scene a little bit. The first thing to realize and to know is that we've reached, in our world today, 7.5 billion mobile connections. This is stupendous. This is more than the world's population. There has never been in the history of mankind a communication technology that has become so pervasive so fast. In Africa, just so you understand, because this is affecting the whole world, it's not just our industrialized countries, 85% mobile penetration is expected this year. Now, what you have to know is that in sub-Saharan Africa, there's about 1% computer penetration. So I don't need to say more for you to understand how incredibly impactful and why this is such a subject of importance. So there's a few key numbers here. Know that as of last year, there were already 100,000 mobile health apps out there. In the US, 86% of people connect via the web to either use health tools of some kind, and 50% of them do it by mobile. So that's something to remember. There's millions of studies out there. Some of them have estimated that mobile health could help save $400 billion by 2017 in industrialized countries, and estimated they could save something like 1 million lives in sub-Saharan Africa by using these tools. So here what I try to do is, it's very difficult, of course, to summarize examples of what's being done in mobile health in one slide because it's affecting all diseases. I chose to give you two specific examples on diabetes because it turns out this is what Alcatel-Lucent has focused on and is doing its programs on. So WellDoc is a mobile coaching solution for diabetes, and it's now being reimbursed by FDA, which is very, it's FDA approved and now being reimbursed by insurance, which is very encouraging for the field of mobile health. It's shown tremendous results, as you can see, almost 2% in reduction in A1C values, and reduced hospitalization rates by 58%. MediSafe app is another very good example. It showed plus 81% of adherence on diabetes medication, which is huge when you know what the cost of non-adherence of medication is, estimated in the US at $290 billion a year. So wearables, monitoring devices, I don't think we have time to get into all of that. Huge use in all of these things that you talked about personalized medicine research. Know that it has been estimated that mobile health can help cut clinical trials cost in half and reduce its time also in half. That's beyond all the data generation that we've been talking about. I wish I had more time to tell you about some of the incredible things that are happening in emerging and developing countries in mobile health, but I do want to make this point with this slide here because Alcatel-Lucent has in fact focused on a social innovation partnership approach in mobile health on developing and emerging countries. And here is why. On this chart here to the right, you will see that this is a PwC study. South Africa, India, and Brazil are ahead of the United States and Europe on mobile health. This always catches people by surprise who are working in industrialized countries. And on the left here, you see a chart of a GSMA study where there were more projects in Africa than anywhere else in mobile health. Why is this? I always cite the mobile payment and mobile banking example. Many of you must have heard of this. Many Africans, Africa is way ahead of the entire world on using their mobile phones as a payment method or as a bank account. In Kenya, 85% of the population is using their mobile phone as a bank account or a payment. It's 25% of the Kenya GNP, which goes through mobile payment transactions, if you can believe it. We haven't even begun to see this here. Why is this? Well, Kenya had about 85% rate of unbanked, okay? The reason I cite this example because it's very powerful, and if you think of how it's going to apply to health, and if you take the lack of infrastructure in Africa, for example, or the doctor-to-patient ratio in Malawi and Tanzania, which is 1 to 50,000 compared to in France, 1 to 300 doctors, here again, you understand why mobile health has a particular significance in terms of what it's going to do to also access to health simply. What we're trying to solve here in our countries has more to do with efficiency and cost effectiveness, but it's also solving problems of access. And now what I'd like to do is just present to you in a couple of minutes. This is this project I was telling you about that actually took partly root here at BIOVISION 2 years ago. It is addressing diabetes using mobile technology. It's happening in Senegal. The field of mobile health has been talked about for over 10 years. It is plagued by the disease that we call pilotitis. There are siloed approaches everywhere. Things are just not going to scale. We believe absolutely that one of the key answers is building multi-stakeholder partnerships with government, international organizations, private sector, NGOs, and citizen sector. The very important partner here is on the right. ITU and WHO signed an agreement 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, to cooperate actually on helping countries to develop mobile health for NCDs. It's called the Be Healthy, Be Mobile initiative. So they've been a tremendous help to put this project together. The whole government of Senegal is around the table. And you can see the 4 pillars here: M, awareness to help diagnose patients, education, of course, and better management of the disease for patients. The training component is extremely important, and mobile phones can really, really be used for this. There are hundreds of thousands of community health workers in India being trained with mobile phones by simple SMS and IVR for those who are illiterate. So the mobile phone can really be useful for this as well. And I will
2 minutes.
stay on that. Yeah, and this is just a quick visual, just to give some reality to this is the pilot that we launched last July. It was around Ramadan time, and it was to try to decrease the hospitalization rates and the complications that occur when people fast when they have diabetes. So you see that the messages can be very, very simple and yet have a lot of impact. That was the pilot, and we're moved now. The project is going to be supported for 4 years by the partners, after which we hope it'll run on its own and be financially sustainable and have reached impact. And this is just a little visual of where we stand now. In the middle here, you see the example of a message that's being delivered to health workers for training. We have planned to sort of send about 1 million SMS and quizzes in the next few months and reach 500,000 patients in the first year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gaudry-Perkins. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're just on time.
5 minutes?
Is there, any questions? I could take one question because we have about 4 minutes left. No questions? The journalist again, these journalists. Can we give him a microphone, please?
I think actually what you said is very interesting, because I was kind of, the compelling vision that we have around this 4P medicine opens up potential problems around healthcare disparities. Maybe what you're reporting on from Africa shows that that may not be the case. I'm just wondering though how comprehensive an M-Health approach can be, how universal it will be, and how all-embracing it will be in comparison with what the sort of vision that we're seeing for sort of 4P medicines in these very wealthy countries, such as Western Europe, such as North America.
I think you're referring to whether it can be completely comprehensive in the emerging country context. I think what's going to happen here, there are incredible innovations and ideas coming from Africa. I mean, I can cite amazing things, like these 4 young Africans, for example, invented a little device that you connect to the phone, where you just stick your finger in it. You don't even have, there's no blood or anything, just through the light connected to the mobile phone. It immediately detects if you have malaria, and that's even before you actually show symptoms of malaria. This is coming from 4 young entrepreneurs in Africa, not from here. So, just so you understand, there's, the interesting concept is the frugal innovation that's coming out of these countries as well, because we're trying to solve a cost issue here in our countries. So I can see a lot of things that we're going to be able to apply to our own countries to solve some of our problems. That being said, and this is where a partnership like the one that I described here is interesting, because it's a global and local kind of sort of partnership. So the innovation is not going to be limited only. As long as you're working on partnership and working both on the global and the local scene, the innovation is going to sort of, come from all places. In the Senegal project, there's a SME out of France which is proposing to build a diabetes database for clinical trials and all sorts of analysis of data. And so we're thinking about bringing them into the Senegal project, just to show you that it's not just only an African project.
Okay. Dr. Baudet has a comment, and we'll close after that.
Well, obviously, it's a fascinating field, and it's great to see it. It's great to see the field evolving. You've mentioned the importance of it and its use for clinical trials, and I'd like to insist on the importance of that. But conversely, I think that we have to be aware also that many of these apps, and particularly in the tracking and diagnostic field, have not been properly tested and have not gone through a proper randomized cluster trial to evaluate the effectiveness, not to mention the cost effectiveness.
Yeah. No, this is a very, very new field, and it's evolving. I heard people talking about walking before running and all of that yesterday, and it's very much true of mHealth as well. There's a lot of, the U.S. is particularly advanced on mobile health regulation, and there's a lot of things that have been happening in the last year because it has to be regulated. It's very, very important. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of apps out there who are not yet, and out of the 100,000, there's not so many that are working, especially on the more medical side.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take your microphone. Okay, thank you. So we are coming to an end of this session. I hope that the quality of what we heard and the different views on what has to be done in order to put these 4 Ps into our health system as giving you food for thought. I think that the rest of the day we'll also discuss different issues around the 4 Ps. I would like to thank my distinguished guests. There are 11, I won't name you all, but I thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Baudet, thank you very much. I think you were pivotal. Dr. Buzyn, I think you saw left. She had to take a train very, very quickly. I thank you both. And on behalf of BioVision, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Au revoir.